Hey. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is our first info call of this season, so if we're a little rough around the edges, that's why. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I've got a little slideshow that I put together, and at a point, I will pass it on to Ezekiel, who's here with us, and we will continue from there. So let's see, where are we?
Actually, getting 10 more back.
I know, isn't that pretty?
Mhm.
Technology, will it work? We're a little rusty.
All right, there it is. No, that looks right.
Great, you guys can see us in the upper corner and the presentation.
So for those who don't know me, although I think, or know us, I think everybody in the room is as a familiar name at least. We are the Fungivore, and since 2019, we have been leading tours in Oaxaca, Mexico, and around. I'm Zachary. This is my wife, Kimberly, obviously. Kim also is running a separate tour company in our dry season called Traveling Traders Bazaar, and hosts in-depth artisan trips, so embroidery, weaving, and the like. So definitely check that out if you're interested or you like to travel not in the rain. This all started for us actually in 2019 at Soma Camp. I saw Alan Rockefeller give a talk on his Mexico adventure, and I proposed doing our first mushroom trip, and it was amazing. We started in Oaxaca and Coahuila, which is actually where we now live. And it has just been an awesome adventure since then. Today, we are going to be talking about MycoChiapas. That is what we're calling our applied mycology adventure. And if anyone isn't familiar with that term, that basically means entrepreneurial uses of mushrooms and the ways that people are actually using mycology in the world to help to change things, to move things forward. And Chiapas has a particularly delicious mix of all of that. I will be introducing shortly, or I'll introduce right now, Ezekiel. He's on the line as well. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
There he is. Not with us today also is a partner in Fungaria and the culinary director. This is Carla Jimenez, and she will be doing a cooking demo with us during our trip, so you'll get to see more of Carla as well. But so to back up a little bit and to create some context for the talk, I'd like to give a little bit of a Mexican overview. For those who are not familiar, Mexico is our neighbor to the south. And you might notice that unlike the US, which has several mountain ranges and plains, Mexico is kind of a continuation of the Rocky Mountains and not much more than that. And it's ironic to me because a lot of people view Mexico as the beach. As you can see, most of Mexico is not beach. And that's good for us that are into mushrooms because the mountains are where the mushrooms happen. Now, the cool thing about Mexico is that it is a mega diverse country. It is one of the five kind of switching around with Colombia and Brazil in the top mega diverse countries in the whole world. Out of 193, it's in the top five all the time. And that is because it has so many bio zones. And Oaxaca and Chiapas in the south are two of those that have an incredible range of both altitudes and also vegetation. So here's Mexico. Similar to the US, it is actually the United States of Mexico. There are 31 states plus Mexico City. And today we will be zooming in on the southernmost state, which borders Guatemala. You can see it down there in the bottom, Chiapas. And at this point, I'm actually going to pass the presentation on to Ezekiel, who will tell us a lot more about Chiapas than I can tell you. And then we'll come back and talk specifically about the tour that we are doing. Let's see here. So I think I have to make you an admin, don't I?
I already sent yeah.
The request has been received.
So I'll turn off my video because I don't have that very good internet connection, so you can see the presentation better. And let me just set this straight. Oh, I have to grant permission from my computer as well. Just give me a couple of minutes.
We got on about 10 minutes early and had to do a series of permissions ourselves to access all the things that we wanted to do.
Oh yeah, Zoom, right.
And Zach says, it's just getting harder to use technology. And I said, I know, honey.
You're getting
Yeah,
old.
of course. I thought it was just like you gave me the permission and I was ready to go, but no. Are you able to see
There
this
we
slide?
go. Yeah, we're in business.
Okay. So I'm not gonna talk really about the whole state of Chiapas because I would be talking hours and hours and I wouldn't finish. So I'm just gonna talk about Chiapas mushrooms wise, and I'll give you a brief intro of why I think foraging in my state is so interesting and compelling for you. First of all, why is Chiapas so diverse? Well, as Zack said, maybe most tourists view Mexico as a big beach, and that's not the case. We have a lot of mountainous um, cities, and also we have low depressions, and that makes up for a great mix of vegetation, of fauna, and also fungi, which is what brings us today. So, for example, just to give you a geographical context of where we'll be, as Sax already said, we'll be in Chiapas, which is at southeastern Mexico. And that's very important because that's one of the main reasons why the state has a lot of biodiversity. Like I said, that's the first point that you see on the slide, the geography of the state. It's important to recall this because Chiapas has the influence of the Nearctic region and the Neotropical region. And that has a lot to do with the mushrooms that we will be able to see. We are going to be mostly in oak and pine forest. So maybe that's going to be like something you already see in the US. But don't be mistaken by that. We're going to see mushrooms that are very different from what you would expect to find in the US just because of that convergence of Nearctic and Neotropic regions. Also, for example, orographic wise, as you can see on the map on the left corner, at the bottom corner, Chiapas has, I don't remember, if 7 physiogeographic regions. What does that mean? It has very complex regions of geologic vegetation and climatic conditions that make up for a very specific pattern of vegetation in each of those physiogeographic regions. And also that's another interesting reason of why we have a lot of fungi. For example, we're gonna be, if you check the map, I think I have a pointer here. No, I don't. But if you check on the map that zooms into Chiapas, there's a region with a light green color. That region is known as the Altos de Chiapas, and that's where we're gonna be at. Specifically in San Cristobal de las Casas, which is the city that you see remarked at the middle of the light green area. And San Cristobal is known for having higher altitude than other cities of Chiapas. Sorry, there's some dogs barking next to my house.
I wasn't sure if it was you or somebody. I was about to be like, somebody mute there, but not
Yeah.
you.
Sorry for that.
Mexico.
But yeah, you might think that all of the fungi that we're going to see is what you're going to be likely to find in all of the state of Chiapas. But if you take another tourist trip, for example, to Palenque or to the Lacandon jungle, the fungi is going to be totally different because the altitude is different, because the landscape is totally different. For example, in San Cristobal is more like forest and mountains, but if you go to the Lacandon jungle, you're going to see a lot of rocks on the surfaces of the trails, or maybe if in Tuxtla we're going to be in the Sumidero Canyon, you're going to see dry conditions. So that all of that makes up for a great diversity of a lot of organisms, and in our case, of mushrooms. And for example, all of those reasons make Chiapas to be the first place in cycad diversity in Mexico. There's some photos of cycads there that I was able to take in the state. And it's also the second place in reptile diversity. But what about the fungal diversity, which is what is of our interest right now? For example, at the moment, 100K species are estimated for Mexico, and we've only recorded 6 to 7K of those. So we don't know a big bunch of the species that are considered to be in the whole country. But in Chiapas, the scenario is even worse because we only know 911 of the almost 50K species that have been estimated. So it's basically like anywhere you step in Chiapas, you're likely to find a new species. And that's basically what we're gonna be able to have during our forays. For example, last year, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Christian Schwartz. It's a mycologist from the US, and he knows a ton about mushrooms, specifically from the Pacific Northwest, right? Because he made a field guide of mushrooms from that region of the US. But anyway, he knows a lot, and he was finding a lot of species that he was like, I'm pretty sure this is something new. And that's something that we also, even though we've been going to this, for example, we're going to visit a place called Huitepec. We've been going there since 2019. And every time we go there, we find something new. So you're going to be able to experience that. And don't get turned off when you ask us, like, do you know the name of this? And we'll be like, I don't. Yeah, because that's likely to happen. We don't know many of the mushrooms that grow in our state. For example, if we were to look at a chart of where the most species have been recorded in Mexico, the first spot is Veracruz, and Chiapas comes third. But that has to do with the fact that most mycologists are in the center of Mexico or in other places. For example, in Chiapas, we only have, at the moment, 5 mycologists, and only 3 of those, myself included, are making studies on taxonomy and trying to record as many mushrooms as we can. The other 2 are more focused on traditional knowledge, so they don't really do studies on diversity. So we have very little people working on those, and that's why the number is kind of low. And in Oaxaca, you see Oaxaca isn't even on the chart so that's kind of weird because Oaxaca it has a lot of biodiversity, and that also has to do with the fact that there's no one in Oaxaca working with mushrooms as well. So in Mexico, it's not the case of mushrooms not being in a certain place. It's actually the case of no one studying those. And now that I share with you this fact that everywhere you step, you're likely to find a new species. Now what I'm going to tell you sounds kind of weird, because only in the last 50 years of studies in Chiapas, only 4 species have been described as new to science, which are the ones that you see on the slide. Lactiflus chiapanensis, which grows on dry tropical forest, Lentaria gossipina, which grows on more cloudy forest, but more on the tropical side of that. Limacella subilinita, which grows also on more tropical conditions. It was actually described from Palenque, so if you go there, you're likely to see that species. And Amanita hyalui, which is the only species that was described from San Cristobal or Altos de Chiapas, which is where we're going to be at. So that's kind of weird, because even though we have a lot of mushrooms, and we have a lot of examples of Chiapas being highly diverse, with mushrooms, we don't have that many species described from our state. And that has to do with the fact that, like I said, not many of us dedicate to describing or recording the diversity. For example, in the slide you see that only 2 mycologists reside in Chiapas. Well, that's because the other 3, including myself, are not currently working in any academic place to study fungi. So we're working on other stuff. And yeah, it's kind of about that. I don't want to get you sad with that kind of information, but that's the reality. And also because most of the efforts focus on temporary forests. And most of the fungi that you'll see in Chiapas has already been recorded from nearby states. For example, we share some of the fungi we have with the southernmost part of Veracruz or with Oaxaca and so on. And where can we find all of the diversity or some of the diversity that I just said in Chiapas? So now I'll share with you the case of study of the work we do, the work that Fungaria does at the Reserva Ecológica de Huitepec, which is a place that we're going to visit at the MycoChiapas tour. Some of the photos, well, the photos that you see there, the photo on the left was from a workshop that we had, and all people gathered around the ID table that we set afterwards. And the photo on the right side of the slide is from our first ever trip to the Huitepec Reserve. So a lot of years have passed upon us, as you can see. So that's a map of Huitepec. First on the right side of the map, you see Chiapas and a little area in blue. That's San Cristobal de las Casas. That's the location of where we're gonna be at. And you can see Huitepec inside that blue area because it's too small. The Huitepec reserve is very small, but Zack and Kim are able to tell you that even though it's kind of small, there's a lot of mushrooms. There's a lot of diversity. And how did we start in that area? We started doing mycological expeditions in 2019, basically because Carla, our cooking director, was like, she reached to us in Facebook and she wanted to make her thesis about edible mushrooms, about wild edible mushrooms. And she was like, could you help me identify these mushrooms? And she sent only pictures of white amanitas. And we were like, no, please don't eat that. So that's how it all started. We then went with her to her forest because she lives like right in the forest, and started foraging with her, sampling all of the mushrooms and doing characterizations of all of the mushrooms. That's interesting because Chiapas has a lot of traditions regarding mushrooms, a lot of knowledge, but in the place where Carla lives, no one knows about mushrooms, or very little people know about mushrooms. And if they do, they only know like the most prominent species that are already known in the whole state. For example, Ramaria or Amanita, some of the most common edibles, and like 4 to 5 species, not that much. So we work more on the side of looking for scientific records of edible species and not really doing interviews with the people, because we knew that they didn't know that much about the edibles. And that's how we were able to assess for the actual diversity of edible species in Huitepec. And having that, then we made gastronomic trials, which was basically bringing all of the mushrooms to Carla and letting her do her work. For example, the soup that you see on the bottom corner on the right side, it's a soup of Ramaria, which was very delicious. And kind of simple, but yeah, very delicious. And the second phase of the work we've been doing with Fungaria is what will bring you to Chiapas in October, which is basically making the workshops. We've called these workshops mycogastronomic because we basically do a mushroom foray in which we teach all of our attendees how to identify mushrooms. We focus mostly on the mushrooms that are easier to identify so that they can continue foraging for their mushrooms afterwards. Like, for example, there are mushrooms that are very difficult to identify if you've only been to, let's say, 2 or 3 forays. So we always try to let them know that they have to first specialize on 1 or 2 species that they can foray without mistaking it by any other species, and then they can continue trying new ones. After the workshops, we've implemented doing WhatsApp chats, and also we've started with Facebook groups to give service to all of the attendees and non-attendees, so that they can identify properly their forays, what they bring afterwards, because also Chiapas is the state with the highest number of mushroom intoxication. So we want to contribute to that, helping everyone, not only attendees, but other people. And with the money that we recover from our workshops, we have extended our mycological expeditions on with the PEC. So it's not only, it's not the work that we've been doing has not only been to basically to sustain ourselves, but it has also worked to continue our scientific endeavors. Yeah. So I think we've been successful with that, because at the moment, these are the numbers that I can present to you. Which fungi and how many mushrooms are and with the PEC at the moment. This number is very conservative. I know that there can be a lot more mushrooms. The thing is that, for example, there are mushrooms that we don't really care about, honestly. For example, cup fungi, we don't know anything about that, or bracket fungi, we don't know about those species, so we basically don't really pay attention to those. But continuing, what you see on these charts, is basically what you're gonna be able to find most frequently during our forays. Not only in Huitepec, because we're gonna visit another places, but the charts kind of repeat all around San Cristobal. For example, in Latin names, the mushrooms that we're gonna be most likely to see are going from order to genus. The order Agaricales, which stands for mushrooms with gills underneath the cap. That's kind of obvious. And but talking more specifically, the families are Amanitaceae, the family of Amanita, Rusulaceae, which is the family of milky caps and Rusula, and the family Boletaceae, which stands for all of the bolids. But we are going to find also a lot of Cortinarius, which is a genus that has a lot of species, and hopefully we're going to find a lot of those. And I don't want to get too involved into these charts, but for example, we're going to find most of our fungi in the oak forest, but we're also going to be able to find a lot of fungi in the cloud forest, which is the CF. Even though on the map you saw that the cloud forest, I think I'm going to go back to that one. The cloud forest is the color light blue on the map. It's not as big as the oak forest, which is the green part of the map. But even though it's kind of small compared to the rest of the extension of the reserve, it has a big chunk of the diversity of mushrooms, as you can see on the chart. The 32% of the mushrooms are there. And yeah, most of the fungi that we've recorded are terrestrial, but that percentage can change if we include someone who actually works with mushroom growing on trees, because we don't do that. Ecologically wise, most of the species are ectomycorrhizal. That means that most of the species associate with the trees and to form the mycorrhizal association. Yeah. And most of the species are still unknown in terms of usage. But of the ones that we know, 37% are edible and only 13% are toxic. And this a small, some photos of what we've been able to photograph in the Huitepec Reserve, and that you will also be able to take photos of. Yeah, this is like very rapid numbers of what we've accomplished with the workshops. I don't want to get too involved into that. Just let you know that we've received people from all over the world. We've had people from Europe, from the US, from San Cristobal, which is most important for us, having people from Chiapas, and from all ages, like very small kids to grandmas and grandpas. And there's been a lot of people still connecting with us through WhatsApp, and to help them with the IDs of their fungi and stuff, as you can see on the photos there. And yeah, these are my social media accounts if you want to reach out afterwards, and that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a lot more than information that I could have given. Do you want to just turn on your video real quick and do a quick introduction of yourself? Probably better than I can do, like what you've been up to in Mexico City and whatnot.
And if anybody has any questions specifically about the presentation,
Yeah.
we can answer them right now, and then we'll move on to talk more about the trip.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm Ezequiel Cruz. I'm a mycologist from Mexico. I just finished my master's in Mexico City at UNAM. And right now I'm living again back in Chiapas, sorry. So yeah, basically that's who I am. And I'm mostly interested in tropical fungi. That's like my main topic, with mushrooms of tropical dry forests and stuff. But I also love oak forest and pine forest, and yeah, every type of vegetation that has mushrooms, basically.
Amazing. Does anyone have any questions? You're welcome to type them as well if you want to put them in the chat box. And if so, if not, we'll continue on with the next. And of course, you can ask questions at the end as well. So that's not a problem. Seeing none, I will continue.
Cool.
Okay. That's right. Boom. All right. So we talked, Ezequiel talked about Chiapas, and you can see Tuxtla, and then the red arrow there is actually San Cristobal. Where Ezequiel was showing you his slides there. So Chiapas is, for us, has been really special, and actually this is when we first met Ezequiel as well. There was in October of 2022, there was the Congreso Nacional de Mycologist of Mexico. And on a crazy bug, we went. I attended. I'm not an academic. I'm a chef. I don't speak academic, and I definitely did not speak Spanish at the time. And so this was like 5 days of presentations of PhDs in Spanish and in academia, and it was just over my head completely. But I met so many amazing people, and Chiapas was incredible. And we kind of just went out on our own with some of the folks and found a bunch of really cool mushrooms. And that was sort of like, okay, we got to spend some more time down here. These are not my photos, but Chiapas is a really special region. It's actually quite similar in many ways to Southeast Asia in that it is all limestone that's been uplifted with various volcanic activities. And as a result of that, you get these really staggering features that you get in limestone. So you get almost the karst landscapes with huge waterfalls that kind of jut off cliffs, caves, and the Sumidero Canyon, which is something that we do explore during our tours. I don't want to talk too much about that because it's pretty wow-worthy. So to talk about our adventure and kind of what the day-to-day looks like, I'll pass it on to Kim, and she'll tell you what we did last year, our first time working with Fungaria and Ezequiel.
Yeah, we figured we could reflect on last year while also presenting what we're going to do this year, because we're really following like a lot of the same format, except we're adding a day this year. Because we decided there's a couple things that we were able to kind of just scratch the surface on that we're excited to do more of this year. So yeah, last year was our first time coming to San Cristobal and hosting a tour there, and it was really an awesome experience. We ended our season really feeling like It was an awesome time. We'll actually kick off where Zack left off in the Sumidero Canyon. So our trip starts on September 24th on a Wednesday, and we have everybody fly into Tuxtla Gutierrez, which is the main airport for Chiapas. We'll have a hotel in Chiapa del Corzo, Chiapa de Corzo, which is right on the square, and it's only about a 25-minute ride from the airport, and we'll have dinner, and then the next day we kick off going to the Sumidero Canyon, which we find is really great because it starts to give you the geographical context of where we are, as well as just some breathtaking nature, as well as introduces you to the history of the area, because there's also some deep history involved in that area. We visit some ruins also in Chiapa del Corzo, and we can learn more about that on the trip. And then we make our way to San Cristobal de las Casas, which is about an hour drive from Chiapa de Corzo. And so starting on Thursday, September 25th, we are in San Cristobal de las Casas the whole time. We're staying in a wonderful hotel called Sombra del Agua. And we are really right in San Cristobal. And this is one of our only tours where we are actually in the village or in the town versus in the mountains, because all of the places that we're going to forage are within 30 minutes. They're really within the city center. So this is not a trip where we're going on long van rides or staying in cabins. We're going to be in a hotel for this one. And our first day is actually in San Cristobal is going to be a walking tour with one of the local expert that we've worked with, just to give everybody a sense of the town. It's got an incredible history. San Cristobal de las Casas is the town of travelers and has a rich history dating back to the Aztecs, way back when. But when we start talking about the city and just how it was designed, it's really fascinating. Like when you see these different quadrants that were the different indigenous groups that lived there. And so he gives us a sense of the place that we're in, because you're going to have some free time, and we really want to encourage people to take advantage of that. So our first day is to give you a sense of like the grounding and get you into the city. And in the afternoon, we're doing a medicinal mushroom chocolate workshop. I won't get into it too much, but we have an incredible partner who's working with folks in the selva and the jungle to both grow cacao as well as reishi mushrooms, as well as cardamom. And so we're going to do a medicinal chocolate making class with them that night, and then you have a free night to explore. You can see us in the middle here with our group on our tour of the city. And then the following day, we start to do our forays. We're going to have 3 different forays during this 8 days together. And the first foray will go out, we'll foray, we'll eat together. And then our partners at Fungaria will take our mushrooms and do some IDing, in which we review the next day or foray. We get to see what we picked, and we'll do table talks at that time. Then we have dinner in town at a great local spot. I'm not going to say some of the names of the places because I'm gonna try and save some surprise. And then after our first foray day, our next day is going to be more of a applied mycology day. So we're going to be visiting a functional mushroom lab that's doing that's both cultivating and doing a whole range of functional mushroom extracts and products.
The turkey tails there on the bottom left are actually outside of that lab there from that we saw last year.
Yeah, and we'll meet Diego, who is the CEO, like the founder of that project, as well as go and do a guided tour of the Mayan Medicinal Museum, on the Mayan Medicine Museum, and then we'll close the evening with a special mushroom meal with some partners of ours. And then the next foray day, actually I'm missing a foray in here. Well, anyway, we'll do a foray in Parque Encuentro on one of the days. I'm missing it. Anyway.
It's down there.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
anyway, we do 3
we're gonna do
forays.
3
You don't need to know
forays.
the names of the parks, but they're all close by.
Yeah, and then we'll have an applied mycology day. And if you go on our website to this trip page, I'm basically reading sort of the day-to-day from that. But it is on the website if you want to get.
But these are some images, of the chocolate bars that we made. It's absolutely stunning, the level of detail, and Julio and his partner's like dedication to what they're doing with chocolates. You can see some of the tacos that Carla made for us last year, and also the identification table that was set up by Alex and Ezekiel, which had already their pre-printed species names, which makes it really awesome for photographing and really great for kind of a quick uptake and have stuff you can study later. So yeah, it really this trip was amazing last year, and we're really looking forward to expanding it by a day. So here are your dates again. And a couple highlights. This is sort of what Kim was just talking about. Now we've increased the length of it to 8 nights because we just didn't quite get enough of some of the things last year, and which is awesome. That should say foraging close to town, not for a gig.
For a gig.
Yeah, and as Kim said, this is actually the only tour in which we stay 7 nights in one place, which is nice to be able to unpack and to chill out. And we have easy breakfast at the hotel before we start each day. And the town is such an awesome place to walk around that it's also one of the few trips that we give people free nights, because you can only experience what we've experienced through us. And there's so much to explore in this place. So for those of you who don't know the steps, you can check out the trip and apply to join at the Fungivore. It's an application to get more information about you guys, which we will review. And if you mark that you want a follow-up call, we are more than happy to talk to everyone individually. And then if you're like, yep, this is for me, then you submit your payment and you secure your spot. I will say that this is almost more than halfway full already, which is exciting. So if you are interested, do make sure you get your application in sooner than later. And if you pay before Valentine's Day, we have a $200 early bird discount to thank y'all for jumping on that boat. So there are some more info calls if y'all are interested in hearing from our other experts as well. Ezekiel kind of set the bar pretty high, so I'll be talking to them about that. And yeah, but tomorrow we'll be talking to both Alyssa and Chad Hyatt about Mycolores and Mycomita, which are both Oaxaca tours. And then on Wednesday, wait.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, and on Wednesday we'll be talking to Gordon Walker from Fantastic Fungi, who will be joining us also in Mixteca. Fascinated by fungi, right? Yeah, so thank you so much. These are the dates of our forays if you want to grab a picture. And
the floor is open for questions.
The floor is open for
To
questions.
say hi. We'd love to hear any questions y'all have. How many people will be on this trip? Well, there'll be airport transfers to our first trip, right? We cap the trip at 12 people. And we don't provide airport transfers. The ride from the airport to Chiapa del Corzo is quite easy.
Yeah, there's
It's
vans.
just right at the airport, and there's a taxi that can take you straight there. And then we do arrange we don't pay for the transport, but we will help arrange the transport the hotel does in San Cristobal.
On the way to go.
Yeah,
go back to
so
the-
when you're heading back to Tuxtla, you can go to the front desk and they'll arrange for the shuttle or the taxi, and it picks you up right in front of the hotel and takes you right to the airport.
All right,
Thanks, Nancy.
great.
We're
Well,
excited.
again, if you have any questions that come up after the call, feel free to send us a text or an email. And if there's questions that are more detailed than I know, I can refer that to Ezekiel to answer.
And I did just want to say, after Ezekiel's presentation, we didn't get to say how actually excited we are to be partnered with Fungaria, because I think what he was talking about was this project, and as a mycologist, there's not a lot of support financially for this kind of work. So Fungaria is doing incredible work to do these forays and raise money to both do their mycological pursuits, but as well as create a sustainable project that gives more access to mycological education in Chiapas.
Yeah.
So just wanted to acknowledge, Ezekiel, you're charging new paths, and we're really happy to be with you this season.
Thank you. Looking forward for the event, and I hope I can meet new people in this one.
There will be definitely new people.
There'll definitely be new people coming. Awesome. Well, if that's it, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this info call. Thank you so much for joining, and this should be up and recorded recorded and up in the next couple days. Bye, everyone.
Bye.